think it's really important that women be able to speak anonymously to the press, right? Like that is something that
100%.
has been, that's
a
tool
foundational.
We need. And when you use that manipulatively,
Then
and
it
you use it to
discredits anonymous sources.
Yes, it blunts this tool that women in particular need to be able to use.
Right.
Like bad journalism does not help women.
Right. All right. It is Thursday, November 11th. It's Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day to all veterans. If you haven't already, check out Zero Blog 30, which is our military podcast. This is episode 189 of the Token CEO podcast. We are presented by Sports Research. If you want a great discount on an at-home workout kit, collagen, vitamins, really anything and everything you need for your workout, go to sportsresearch.com and use promo code Erika for 25% off. So before we jump into today's episode, a week ago, Business Insider wrote a fairly lengthy piece on Dave. There's been a lot made of this piece on social. Dave's responded pretty vehemently against the allegations in the piece. I just wanted to talk about it for a second. One is that the piece was extremely hard for me to read. It was hard for me because I don't think any woman should be forced to do anything against her will. And regardless of how that story was constructed or who it was about, that is something that I stand behind. The second thing that was really disturbing was how that piece came together, the fact that it dropped on the same day as Penn's earnings, the fact that I'd heard about the piece almost a year before from a hedge fund manager who was actively shorting the stock. And it was hard to see something like that written about someone who I work so closely with, who I have so much respect for, who I have a deep friendship and a partnership with, and who I care about immensely. And it rocked us. It rocked us. I also think reading something like that, it makes you uncomfortable. And there's a whole bunch of reasons to be uncomfortable with a lot in that piece. And I've been through a whole gamut of emotions in the last week. I think there's a lot of people who've been in those emotions. I know Dave has been through the whole gamut himself. The thing that's most important to me is that the piece has kind of fallen apart in the aftermath in terms of the facts weren't well constructed. In fact, they've been pretty directly refuted. Two is the piece matched a narrative by a reporter, and I would say with lack of oversight from her editors, and used to fuel a subscription machine known as Business Insider. There have been no criminal allegations. There have been no further assertions. We are taking this so incredibly seriously. I'm taking this so incredibly seriously. I have zero tolerance for anything criminal, zero tolerance for anything that's non-consensual. I have zero tolerance for anything that's criminal. I think sex is something that's extremely private, extremely vulnerable, extremely personal. And I think it's hard to know what happens in someone's intimate and private life. And, you know, what you're seeing in this case is there are a lot of women who are approaching Dave of all different ages, from all different places, who are looking for a variety of things. They're finding them and then they're talking about them. And I think it raises a lot of questions about sex culture. I think it raises a lot of questions about celebrity. What I feel my purview is and our purview is to maintain a workplace that is strong and has good standards and that is a safe place for people to work, and where issues that make people uncomfortable or that put people in difficult positions are able to be resolved confidently and confidentially and with positive resolution. I also really feel very sensitive about the fact that I don't think it's an employer's job to manage someone's private life. Dave is responsible for his personal life. I'm responsible for my personal life. Anyone who works in this room or in this company or in the world is responsible for themselves. I don't think it's your company's job to opine on who you're sleeping with, the color of the person you're sleeping with, the way that you're sleeping with that person. Do you videotape it or not? Are you kinky or not? I think so long as things are consensual and legal, a person's private life should be just that, which is private. And that's really important to me, and that's important to me with this company. I also have gone really deep with Dave, and, you know, a lot of people have said this, but Dave Portnoy is the most honest, forthright person I have ever met, and 100% to a fault. I've seen how this has torn him up. I've seen him fight for his life on this. Dave is someone who I've worked intimately with for 6 years. I trust Dave, and I believe him. And what the facts are showing is that what Dave is saying is true. And so I think that, you know, the ask to condemn Dave when the facts don't support it is really, really difficult. I also have a lot of questions. What were the motives behind this article? Why did it drop on the day of earnings? Why was there a massive shorting of the Penn stock? What took the reporter 8 months? Why wasn't this fact checked in a way that it could have been? Why won't Business Insider talk about the article with Dave or with Barstool Sports? And so those are things we're grappling with and looking at now. We continue to be super vigilant as we are about a lot of things here. We're very aware of cancel culture. This isn't the first time we've been attacked around cancel culture. And I think for me, it's really important to give people the space to digest this, to manage it, to internalize it, and to make decisions on it. And that's what I will, and hopefully that's what I'll be doing from here on out. All right, now that we've covered that, we've got headlines. We will interview Carly Reilly. She was part of the Andrew Yang presidential campaign. She's based here in New York City. She was the subject of a Business Insider article, which interestingly was constructed very similar to the article about Barstool Sports and Dave last week. We talked to her about her experience, and then we'll move into adulting. All right, first headline. High schoolers barred from hockey games after taunting female goalie. Not cool. So in Armstrong, Pennsylvania, all of the students at the junior and senior high school have been banned from hockey games for the rest of the season. Why have they been banned? They've been banned because students in the stands could be heard chanting and heckling the visiting team's goalie, who so happened to be a woman. She was the only female on her team, so good for her. I'm sure this woman is awesome. These jerks from Armstrong, Pennsylvania, were essentially spent the entire game calling her a whore and using crude language and sexist chants. The decision was not made by the Armstrong, Pennsylvania junior high. It was made by the league itself. And the school principal then followed up to say the appropriate disciplinary action was taken against students, but we do not know what that was. The board of the visiting hockey team, which is called the Mars Hockey Club, I should get a Mars Hockey Club t-shirt, issued this statement. We are hopeful that the attention this incident has drawn will shed light on the issues our female athletes face, which must not be tolerated, and that this attention will help with eliminating this type of conduct from our sport. All right, so my net on this is what jerks. I hope that this woman grows up, runs a company, and just basically gives the middle finger to everyone from Armstrong, Pennsylvania. I have no doubt that this is something she is totally capable of, and also just disgusting behavior from a junior high school. Junior high schoolers, let's be honest, it's not the finest section of society. So, but you know, you got to hope that they learn their lesson. I hope that the Mars hockey team gets more women on it. Okay, so in time for Veterans Day, we've got an awesome story here. It's the first time ever a woman has just graduated from the U.S. Army Sniper School. I love the idea of a female sniper. I would make a horrible sniper. I can hardly see to my desk from here. But the U.S. Army Sniper Course at Fort Benning, Georgia, is known to be one of the most, if not the most, grueling courses in the Army. For the first time, a woman from the Montana Army National Guard has completed the course. The Army isn't releasing her name. I wonder if she's going to go do some like Black Ops thing. But they've said that they're extremely proud of her. She epitomizes what it means to be an infantry soldier, and there wasn't a doubt in our minds that she would succeed in the U.S. Army sniper course. So we've got a real life G.I. Jane. That's awesome. Congratulations. So obviously, if you're in sniper school, you need insurance. I wonder if the U.S. government gives you insurance. I don't know. But anyways, clearly this woman's out shooting a gun, picking people off everywhere, hoping to not be picked off herself. You know what she probably needs is life insurance. Ladder is a 100% digital life insurance company. No doctors, no needles, no paperwork. So if you want to apply for life insurance for $3 million or less, that seems adequate. You can sign up 100% online. Just takes a few minutes. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from your laptop, whatever's easiest for you. Also, if you prefer to talk to a human being, I like to talk to human beings. You can talk to one of Ladder's licensed agent. They don't work on commission. Amen. So they actually want to help you. They don't just want to close a sale. Ladder has no hidden fees. You can cancel at any time, and you can get a full refund if you change your mind within the first 30 days. Go to ladderlife.com/token today to see if you're instantly approved. That's LADDER life.com/token. LADDER life.com/token and get your life insurance quote today. So Carly, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
For everyone who doesn't know Carly, we just met, but I discovered Carly on Twitter. I thought you were really interesting. I read a tweet thread you had posted and reposted this weekend, really around your experience with Business Insider. You worked on the Andrew Yang campaign. As I understand it, you ran some of the finance pieces of that. But the thing that really struck me about what you posted was your experience as the victim of an article.
Yep.
The recourse you tried to gain and the way you tried to address the truth. And ultimately, I think the machine you kind of got caught into. So for people who don't know you or your story, give a sense of that.
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack there, so I'll try and keep it brief to start.
That's okay.
We can dive in more. So like you said, I worked on Andrew Yang's presidential campaign. I joined that in 2018. I was really early on the team, like 5 of us when I joined. And
did you always want to be in politics?
No, I was always I was a political science major. I was always interested in politics, but not more actually on the media side. Interestingly, less on the campaign side. But I heard Andrew on a podcast back in 2018, and then I saw him speak in person, and was really compelled by his vision. I thought, like, this is just what he's talking about is new and fresh, and it's worth having this on a national stage, and maybe I can help with that. So joined really early, decided after the campaign I was not interested in staying in politics because I was like, oh, this is a whole toxic bunch of crazy. Love Andrew, though. So I didn't join him for the New York City's mayor's race. He ran for mayor here in New York. I had left at that point, but stayed close to the team, stayed close to him. And in February of this year, during the mayor's campaign, Business Insider came out with an article. I think it was called like Inside the Toxic Bro Culture of the Andrew Yang Presidential Campaign. It was really long. And as the name probably indicates, it was not friendly. It was a total smear piece. And it was really, really dishonest. And the point you made, it also talked about me kind of extensively and treated me like I was a victim of this terrible culture that they were writing about.
Did you give an interview? Like, had the reporters reached out to you?
Well, what was so fascinating was the reporter reached out to me about 48 hours before she said she was going to publish the piece, though I kind of, like...
You had heard about it.
I'd heard about it. And had heard that somebody had said she should talk to me like months prior before getting reached out to.
And sorry, I think the piece called you a token female. Were you one of the only women on the Yang
not by
campaign?
the end. Yeah. In the early days, I was the first woman on the team.
How many people were on the team?
Oh, by the end, you're talking about 250 to 300 because you
what
have
about
field
at the beginning?
staff. Well, when I joined, there were 5 of us.
Okay.
So I was
so
the
4
first,
guys and you.
4 guys and me. And yeah, I mean, it called me a token female, but it also spoke. I mean, this is a rabbit hole, right? But it said that there had been this strategy crafted by senior men on the campaign that had led to me being doxxed on 4chan. My phone number was posted on 4chan at one point during the campaign by Trump supporters, not Yang supporters, which the article missed. And so she had reached out to me really just seeking sort of my validation that I was like a victim. I was like, whoa, you're way off base. Like the whole tone of the email was, I found like infantilizing. And so I responded with a long thing being like, here's what really happened. Please, I really would like to get on the phone with you if you're going to publish this piece. And she completely ignored that. And then ran the piece. And yeah, I mean, it was just top to bottom stunningly bad. Also, I mean, we had 9 senior women from the campaign who had emailed the reporter. Once I got my email, I started reaching out to my friends from the campaign being like, hey, reach out to this woman and see if she'll talk to you. Ignored all of us. Like the just complete lack of due diligence. It was stunning. And it ended up being really formative for me because I was like, this is so much worse than people realize.
Yeah.
Like the media and then this ecosystem around them, which, you know, there was a comms team on the mayor's race who sort of told me like, oh, don't bother trying to fight this piece. Like, this is just the way it is. And I was like, what do you mean this is the way it is? Like, this is like literally one woman's account. Yeah. She's being made to sound like she's 27 people. It was just, and
what was the nexus of the piece? There was a former staffer or?
Yeah. I mean, it was really like a litany of stories of like, you know, indications, supposedly indications of sexism, right? But like, again, you're talking about one person who told like 10 different stories, who had, you know, an issue with the campaign. And then the way it was reported, it sounded like 10 different women
had shared different stories.
So like as if the scope of this
was the
so
magnitude
big,
was so
which was
large.
so striking. I was like, if you felt like the magnitude had to be this great in order to write the piece,
why wouldn't you have included my story?
Well, right. And also like maybe you shouldn't be writing the piece because you clearly didn't have that magnitude. I mean, this was also somebody I knew had been working on this piece for a very long time. I had people I know who said, hey, like I was reached out to, very leading questions when I didn't say bad things about the campaign. You know, that clearly wasn't what she was interested in, right? Like she was only interested in hearing negative things about the
things
campaign.
that fit the narrative.
Things that fit her predetermined narrative. Yeah.
And then so you get stuck in the spin cycle. So the article gets published. You're not reflected in it. You're a subject of the piece. It's infantilizing. It's patronizing. It's maligns Andrew and
all in the
entire
name of supporting
campaign.
women.
All in the name of supporting women. And then you decide, despite the advice of your comms team, to fight back. So then what happens?
So, and I wasn't on the mayor's race, so it wasn't my comms team. I was like, y'all can say whatever you want. But I'm, I'm not down for this. So I immediately reached out to Business Insider. I will say, actually, I had a good experience with their editors. Like, they were responsive to me when I was like, what? But again, I was the victim of the piece. I immediately reached out to Business Insider and started laying out my case for like just how bad it is. But it's so hard because it's insidious, right? Like you're like the whole premise is problematic, right? Like from the jump, it's not like just one fact or one. It's like you need to research and redo the entire piece for this to be honorable. But because I was being told I wouldn't even get a correction, I didn't push for a retraction at that point.
You're being told by the editors this.
I was being told by the mayor's comms team.
Okay, they're like, don't bother.
They're like, don't bother. This is just how it goes.
Okay,
I was like, what?
This is modern media.
Yeah, and I was like, isn't this your job to be fighting this? To be honest. So then I also started seeing what other reporters were retweeting the piece, and I started emailing them and saying, hey, I want you to know I was featured really heavily in this piece, but wasn't given the opportunity to speak to the reporter, and I want to correct the record on what I see as like these inaccuracies. And so then I started getting on the phone with a lot of other reporters who were going to do follow-ups on this piece. Mostly that did not happen because I started putting them in touch with the other women who weren't included in the Business Insider piece. And I guess I'll say like more reputable news outlets, I don't know, like then didn't pursue it because they had this very vocal female being like, this piece smeared me.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of work. Like I had a full-time job at the time. I'm going to do now, but it's a different one. And like, I wasn't doing my job. And thank God I had really sympathetic bosses and managers, but like writing it all out, telling my side of the story, getting in touch with the reporters, like having those conversations was a crazy amount of work. And if I hadn't done that, and not to be self-aggrandizing at all, but like this story would have just spread.
Do you think it worked? Did your effort work?
I absolutely think it worked.
So what changed? What happened?
Well, so I think a lot of journalists don't actually go into stories wanting to write a bad piece, right? They just, are kind of lazy, right? And they know what's going to get clicks. And so when you're presented with somebody who's, again, a woman who's being painted as a victim, and she's coming to you saying, please don't follow up on this piece because it was really dishonest, or if you're going to follow up, do it properly, right? And talk to all of these people. Most were really receptive to that. It was striking because the piece did end up getting linked to in a New York Times article, and I had spoken to the Times reporter who had like told me, that when she dug, she couldn't find evidence of the misogyny claims, but she still linked to that article. And it was interesting because it speaks to this question of accuracy. Like she said, Business Insider reported these things, which is accurate, right? Yeah. But it struck me as this is like some of those insidious ways that journalism can be really dishonest, that you're still amplifying a story that you've told me you don't think is credible.
Yeah, but it's
clickbaity.
Correct.
And it feeds a narrative now that you're doing,
Yes. It's interesting. It's almost, there's this, unfortunately, what you're illustrating is there's a pattern, right? Yeah. There are not all journalists. There's incredible journalists out there.
100%.
There are some journalists who have an axe to grind or a narrative to drive or subscriptions to fill and the desire to articulate a narrative or a story and then compile from too few sources with too many holes and gaps in the story, with too little fact finding, with not enough editorial oversight. They come up with, a narrative. It gets published with a juicy, beautiful, disturbing headline. Yep. Misogyny in the Andrew Yang campaign is a great headline.
Totally.
No New Yorker is not reading that, right?
He was running for mayor.
Right. Like this is a big story. Yep. Bro culture, Andrew Yang, maligned woman. There's then the machine of feeding the subscription piece, the discounting, the promotion of the article, the regurgitation of the article.
Well, of course, and that's the irony too, is you do have these like men running Business Insider who feel like on some level you feel like are profiting off of basically the Me Too movement.
Right.
And manipulating like a very legitimate movement, right, and concern around sexual assault. I mean, I think also there's this interesting piece of like macro justice versus micro justice. And I think some of these young journalists, in my case, this was a very young journalist who I know kind of saw herself as like a crusader for women. And she's thinking about it, I would think, sort of on this macro level of like men have been the beneficiaries of press and PR.
Sure, I'm going to speak truth to power.
Right, like, for forever on this macro level. Yeah. But it's not taking into account like on the micro level, this was completely unfair and you're smearing innocent people, and that's not okay either.
Right.
And so, and I think that gets missed. I think people who tend to be more on the left are kind of looking at it in this macro side, and there's almost a sense of like, okay, if there's one innocent person that goes down in this broader
narrative needs to be told. The
fair?
Details of her story don't really matter so much.
And I get that, honestly. Like, again, I'm a super feminist, which...
But see, I have an issue with that because I think that, look, like... things aren't equal for women. Things aren't just for women. Women are taken advantage of. But what point is victory if you get to victory in such a shitty fashion, which is through untruths or half-truths or mistold stories? Like, I think women have the opportunity to take over the world. I am fully confident that we will. I would like to think that we would do it in a slightly better way than the men have.
We can't get to victory this way, in my opinion.
Correct.
Like, I think this fully undermines the very movement these journalists think they're celebrating and like furthering.
Right.
I mean, the example I would give is, I said, right, you had this one woman who's made to sound like she's 10 different women in this story because of anonymity. Like, I think it's really important that women be able to speak anonymously to the press, right? Like, that is something that
100%.
has been...
That's a tool
foundational. And when you use that manipulatively...
Then it discredits anonymous sources.
Yes, it blunts this tool that women in particular need to be able to use.
Right.
Like, this is not helping. Bad journalism does not help women.
Right.
We need good journalism that is standing up for women and helping women. It's like there's not going to be victory this way.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that. What's your biggest takeaway from this experience?
I think it's to be discerning when you read things, right? Like, I'm not at all trying to tell people like, don't believe anything, right? I think that leads down a very dangerous path too. But I think people are not aware how manipulative the news media can be. And so when you're reading stories, like, pay attention to little things. Like, if they're like, oh, we talked to all these women from the campaign and then pivot to something bad. Okay, well, did all of those women say something bad? Like, the way things are phrased,
be careful of the omission as well as the assertion.
100%. I mean, be careful about what's not being said. That's a huge way that things get manipulated. Be careful of how something is worded. Again, something can be accurate without leading you to a truthful conclusion. And I think I just learned kind of how bad it is. So I just really ask people to be independent-minded, right? To be discerning when you're reading something. Really pay attention to the exact words being used, and don't just like come away with the aura of the piece, because the aura might be really misleading.
And what's your advice to other people who find themselves in your shoes? Like, are you glad you fought back?
I'm 100% glad I fought back. I you know, it comes with consequences. Like I have angry people in my DMs, and you're going to get people saying nasty things to you. I happen to think like I'd rather that and still be able to use my voice. Like I just feel it feels so important to me to get the truth out there. And journalism feels really important to me. So I would say 100% fight back. People are actually more responsive maybe than you think they're going to be. And so, but again, I'm not trying to tell people to put themselves in a position to be harassed online, which you're also going to do if you talk.
Yeah. So you tell your new bosses, you're like, sorry, I need a timeout. I got to go fight for my name. What happened?
So Business Insider issued a correction, and they actually issued a massive correction at the top of the story. I mean, this is the longest correction I've ever seen. I don't want to tell people to go look at this piece because it's such a...
But the correction is so good, it's
fire
worth it.
Trash, but I'm like, look at this thing. It's literally just like a glaring neon sign being like, this is trash reporting. Now, to me, I wish I'd asked for a full retraction. I asked for less than I wanted because, again, I was being told I wouldn't get anything. But yeah, they issued a huge correction and had to change parts of the piece. They should have changed the whole piece. But yeah. So again, that's in advocacy of speaking out, because if you're forceful and you're right and you're approaching in good faith, which I was.
Why does no one in the media hold each other to that truth? Like, that's one of my questions. Like, the New York Times has the power, certainly the platform. Their whole brand is the truth, which, you know, has, I think, been maligned. But why, in your opinion, is the Times not holding other publishers like BI or anyone else to task?
I think it's two things. I think it's easier not to, certainly, and I think that's a huge part of it. And I think it also speaks to this macro justice thing where nobody wants to seem like they're on the side of not being for women. And that's what's so frustrating to me. Is like, I'm super for women. Like, I won't accept that, like, speaking out about bad journalism has to put me on the other side of that fight.
Yeah, you can be for women and for the truth.
100%. In fact, I think those things are one and the same. Yeah. But that's a more nuanced point. And
and unpopular.
And unpopular. And I really think it's that. It's nobody wants to be on the other side of the mob, and nobody wants to be seen as if they're not supporting women. And it's just easy. It's the path of least resistance to kind of continue the echo chamber and support women.
Great. Carly, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So thanks to Carly for joining us. If you are finding yourself the subject of a hit piece, why not have a drink? I love High Noon. It's real vodka, real juice, and a little bit of sparkling seltzer. It's not a lot of calories. It's gluten-free. You can find it in the supermarket. You can find it in the liquor store. I personally like a variety pack. This weekend, I had a lot of High Noons, just being super honest with you. So check out High Noon and go to wherever liquor or alcohol is sold and get yourself some. So adulting. So our adulting topic today is end-of-year reviews. We've kicked off our end-of-year reviews at Barstool. We're trying to map our end-of-year reviews to our values and to the priorities for the company. I think end-of-year reviews can be kind of anxiety-ridden, that it can make you feel anxious. You're wondering what your bonus is going to look like. Here would be my advice walking into your end-of-year review. 1, don't wait for November or December when the review starts to start thinking about what you're going to say in your review. Start documenting stuff now. Think about the year behind you. What'd you accomplish? What'd you learn? What went well? Be self-critical. What didn't go well? Where didn't you push when you could have? Where did you give up when you shouldn't have? What could you have done to be more effective, smarter, more purposeful, more fulfilled in your job? So the biggest thing I think you can do going into your review is to really have your head around what is it that you want to convey to your manager? What is it you want to hear in return? What specific feedback are you looking for? And what is it that you want to accomplish out of the review? Do you want more responsibility? Do you want more money? Do you want to try something new? Do you want to think about a change in pace, in job, in responsibility, in reporting, you name it? Have a good plan before you go in. And I think your boss will appreciate the level of thought that you've put into your role and to your your contribution to the company, and you should expect and want the same thing in return. That's it for today's episode. If you haven't already, subscribed to the podcast. We've got a new job board. So if you go to worklikeagirl.com, you can post a job that you think other women who follow this podcast, or really anybody in general, should be interested in. This is something that was born out of our Facebook group. The Ashleys were doing this on Facebook. We've moved it over to our own job board. So if you have a job that you know of, or you're looking for a job, check it out and see if we can help you get new employment. Follow us on all the socials. You can follow Token. You can follow me at Erika Nardini, and we'll see you back here next week.